Today in the Smuggler's Room, we take another step forward in our ongoing room build. That's coming up. What's up, you awesome geeks? I'm Brian and welcome to the Smuggler's Room. This week, this chubby geek wants to add one more layer to our ongoing room build and give a proper home to our drain pipe lighting project. So let's get to it. So since we're working on the room and we're working on this angled pitch or angled section of the roof, the first thing I did was took a piece of 1/4 inch MDF and we cut a bevel right down the edge of it here. And this will serve as the foundation, as the base of our actual ceiling piece. So the next thing we want to do is add some layers to the top of it. The layers were cut out on the laser cutter by adding in a lot of various designs. And the thought was I could add these in a section at a time and lay them out on our piece of MDF. We have the opportunity to add a more three-dimensional piece that would sit inside here. This panel has 3 recessed areas that I plan on using these pieces of plastic to sit down inside each hole. Now, one of the great things about this hobby is finding everyday items that you can use in your projects just by looking at them a little differently. These pieces of plastic are no exception. I actually work at my day job for an audio-video manufacturer that sells lighting, a keypad lighting dimmer. Let's take a look in this box and let me show you what I'm talking about. This is a Control-4 keypad. It's used in automation systems. And inside is actually a set of keypad buttons. These are the buttons that go on in different configurations that functions and controls your lighting. We're going to be using a lot of this automation lighting in the room build, but in this case, I'm actually more interested in the packaging. The packaging itself, where all the vacuform parts for all the buttons, has an awesome detail. And it's just one of those examples of something as mundane as a plastic package that would add a whole nother level to your sci-fi project. For this panel right here, I want to take advantage of this cutout area. We can put some recessed parts and pieces behind here. Now that we got that hole cut out, the next thing we need to do is glue all the individual panels down to our 1/4 inch MDF, and then we can go ahead and seal the entire outside. We're gonna have to do at least 2 or 3 layers of sealant. That way when we paint, we get a nice smooth finish. Okay, so we have our angled panel, but we need a way to mount it to the wall. So all I did was make an angled bracket out of 3/4 inch plywood. This way, you can have a 45-degree angle to keep our panel in the orientation that we want and a way to mount it to the MDF wall we previously installed. So we've got our angled panel, but we also need a ceiling panel. We need something with structure that our light can mount to. And if you want to see how we built that light, you can check out the links above and in the description below and watch that project in full. For the ceiling panel, we want it to be flush with the edge of the front of our column, but wide enough for the light to mount. And we need to fill that with layers of detail. I also want to include a bit of pipework with some PVC and some greeblies. We'll use electrical boxes, simply juice lids, and other junk from around the shop to do that. One of the craziest aspects of this build is the way that it's constructed, meaning that I have to flip it upside down and backwards when it's sitting on my table versus how it's going to be when it's mounted to the ceiling. So everything has to be kind of looked at in a certain way and imagined what it's going to look like when it's flipped around upside down and put in its proper orientation. So hopefully we get it right. One of the things with the room build we're constantly thinking about is depth and texture. Meaning, when we put this ceiling piece up, we want it to have multiple layers. Add dimensionality to the structure. That way you have places for the weathering to get into the nooks and crannies, but also the way light plays across the surface, creating shadows and depth across the entire piece. This is a lot more interesting than if it was just flat and painted. Those little recesses and all those different elements make it more interesting to look at. Getting all of this installed and filming it is a little bit more of a challenge than I was able to overcome. But all said, everything went in as smoothly as I had hoped. The brackets we made out of plywood were able to attach that angled panel, and then the ceiling, as big as it is, it's really lightweight, and so I was able to just lift it up, slide it into position, and then attach it to the columns as well as the stringer to the ceiling. I have to tell you, I'm really pleased with how this turned out. Every step we take gets us a little bit closer to the end of this project, but now I'm starting to actually be able to visualize what it's really going to look like as we take each step. One thing I'm really looking forward to is having guests over and watching them as they discover every nook and cranny and finding new details with every turn. So we hope you've picked up a few tips today, that you learned something you didn't know before, and it's given you the motivation and the knowledge to get out there yourself and build something out of nothing.